So here you're gonna see a quick workflow double speed of me building the entire sky environment around my map. And in the previous tutorial I started doing this, and now you get to see the whole workflow. And I'm gonna talk a few things on what I'm doing and a few tips here and there about optimizing the level and keeping everything nice and neat. So first thing is make sure that you are on grid, or that you're snapping to grid. Currently I am working on 16. You may choose to work on 8 or 32, but make sure that it's snapped. That way you keep your brushes up against each other, and they will not have any gaps in between brushes. And that's another. And the second thing I want to mention is you don't want to have absolutely any gaps in between brushes, because what that will do is it cause errors when you compile, and it creates leaks. And you don't want any leaks in your map. And to make sure that you have no leaks, stay on grid, work one area at a time, and make sure that everything creates kind of like a cube and a vacuum inside its own inside the level itself. So that's why I'm taking all the brushes and I am surrounding my whole map inside the sky brush. You also get to see the snow draw texture applied to certain brushes, and that comes down to optimizing the level. And I will talk more in detail about optimizing the level later, but a few quick things about it is any brush that a player cannot see should have a no draw texture. And what that does is their engine does not render the no draw texture, so it lessens the compile time, and it makes your whole map run smoother. And it all comes down to a workflow, how you start your level and how you work through your map. And a few people work different way. The way I used to work is the way I would create brushes of my environment is I would create a sky along with it. As I create the walls and the ceiling and everything else, I would create the sky around it as I go along. In this particular environment, it was better for me to create the environment first and then create sky brushes around it later. And there is no right or wrong way to do so. It's just one, it depends on the kind of environment you're building, and two, it's where you're comfortable with and where your speed is at, where you're good at. So it'll take some time to figure that out, but this is just one of many ways to build a map. And another thing somebody mentioned on the forums about the no draw texture is they block in their whole environment using no draw texture brushes, and then they apply a developer brush to the faces they do see. So that eliminates a lot of optimization time later when you are applying no draw texture brushes textures on the brush. You don't have to do that because you've already done it ahead of time. So that's just another thing to keep in mind, that if you want to start blocking in your environment, use the no draw brush textures on everything, and then apply developer texture just to the brushes you do see. So now the back side is done, and I am moving towards the big front of the building, or more of a kind of a side. And I am duplicating a lot of brushes and making sure they're snapping to each other and moving them down. As you can see, I am working one area at a time, and just kind of making sure I am progressing around the map. I'm also getting in close and seeing that no brushes overlap or intersect each other. That's another important thing to keep in mind. You don't want two brushes intersecting and going into each other. So making sure that you have clean snapped geometry is very important in Hammer, because as your level gets bigger, it will increase your compile time. So the cleaner you can have your geometry, the better. So now I'm moving on to the front of the building and under the building. One error that I see a few people make when they create sky around their map is to create a huge cube and they surround their map inside that cube and then they hollow it out. And that's not it's not the best or optimal way to create sky. First, it doesn't get optimized and increases your render time, and it's not the best way to do so. You want to actually create each individual single brush and make sure that everything kind of comes out like the way you see me working here. Everything comes from a specific surface. There's many sky brushes around, and it creates a much better optimized level this way. So now I'm making sure that the terrain is completely inside, will be inside our sky brushes, and now you can see that I am applying no draw texture just to kind of save me time later on brushes that the player will never see. Because even if a player doesn't see a brush but it has a texture on it, it will still render out. That means longer compile time and slow level. Especially when you have, if it's online multiplayer, it'll run slower. So you want to use as much of optimization as possible, and you want to create the best optimized and clean level. And we'll go more into detailing the level and applying textures and optimizing later on. So, but this is just kind of a few tips here and there, so you get to keep certain things in mind as you're building it, because it'll helps you out. So now I'm creating the bottom floor, and I'm duplicating another brush, and I'm creating. So you see, I'm not just taking that bottom brush and extending it out. I'm making sure that each individual brush has its own purpose, has its own place. And here I am almost done, and then we will compile our map and we'll get to see what it looks like. And see, you get to see really quick how the sky and how the environment lighting looks in our map.